Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this panel on social entrepreneurship by the YIF alums. I'll be guiding you through this. I'll be guiding you through this webinar with the help of another fellow, Radhika Joshi. To give you a little brief background about the YIF, the Young India Fellowship is a one. Yeah. Sorry. The Young India Fellowship is a one-year program focused on the liberal arts. We pride ourselves in creating the next generation of change makers, and since its inception a decade ago, the YIF has helped young individuals switch career paths meaningfully, explore diverse areas of study and practice, grow further as a working professional, start organizations, and create sustainable impact while solving problems at the core of our society, all while belonging to a global community of fellows. Our moderator for today is Radhika Joshi, who hails from Dehradun, Uttarakhand. She's currently pursuing the Young India Fellowship and is the founder of the Second Chance Project, which is a youth-led social initiative to raise awareness about organ donation in India. Radhika has been a Yes Foundation Media for Social Change Fellow and a Youth Ki Awaaz Action Fellow. She has also been recognized as an Ashoka Young Changemaker by the Ashoka Innovators for the Public. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you, Aman. Hello, everyone. The panel for today is known as the Young India Fellowship, Pathways of Possibilities, Social Entrepreneurship, and today we have three eminent YF alumni with us. I'd like to introduce Sonal Jain first. Sonal is a menstrual health advocate and has been a MHH, that is a menstrual health and hygiene facilitator since the year 2013. Sonal is a laureate Global Fellow 2018, a World Merit Fellow 2015, and a recipient of Microsoft Youth Spark Challenge of Change Global Award 2015. Sonal's everyday activities include empowering conversations and living mindfully. Thank you, Sonal, for coming here today for the panel. Our next panelist is Abhishek Chaudhary. He started an organization known as Sanja with two other co-founders. Sanja is mission towards transforming the public education system through parental as well as community participation. Sanja began its operations with 50 schools in 2014 and has now scaled its operations to 3 states, reaching up to at least 1,500 schools. Abhishek is a recipient of Echoing Green Global Fellowship 2014 and Forbes 30 Under 30 Young Achiever Award 2015. He is a Young India Fellow and a Gandhi Fellow from the class of 2012. Thank you, Abhishek. Our next panelist is Senthil. Senthil is an entrepreneur and a passionate teacher at heart who's designing serious games with a vision to unleash human potential through serious play. Over the past 8 years, Senthil has walked in many shoes, from a nanofluids researcher to a computational fluid dynamics analyst to a liberal arts expert to ultimately an entrepreneur since 2017. His serious games were presented in Tech 2018, organized by UNESCO MGIEP, and he won the Youth Speak Summit Award 2018 and TN Innovation Grand Challenge 2019. Senthil is a mechanical engineering graduate from College of Engineering and the recipient of the prestigious Young India Fellowship. We thank all our panelists for coming here today and for taking out the time to enlighten individuals about the Young India Fellowship and social entrepreneurship. Our first question to all the panelists would be, what do you feel is the importance of multidisciplinary education in today's world? Why is it critical? And how has liberal arts helped you in your journey towards social entrepreneurship? I'd like to ask this question to Sonal Jain first. Sonal, over to you. Sonal, you're on mute.
Thank you for reminding me. I was just thanking you for the question. I think the answer is just so in my face for me and so obvious when I think about liberal arts, especially for an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur in particular, because in entrepreneurship, one is not an expert at what they're doing. There is a lot of passion, there is a vision, there is insane amount of effort, which any entrepreneur will no doubt tell you. And so often we're collaborating with a bunch of people where we're not an expert. So it's often a lot of humility, curiosity, and willingness to be open to learning and open to collaborating that gets us going. So we start off, we're like, okay, fine. So for business modeling, whom do I go to? Or once you've captured a certain part of beneficiaries or market, as you know, the usual marketing term is, then how do you expand, how do you scale? So there's so many different challenges that come. And if you're also a social engineer, then how do you get into monitoring and evaluation? Or if you're a product based company, then with respect to product, or if you're working with a product such as Boon does, then you need chemical engineering and you need like multiple expertise that come to play. And a lot often when we start off, we capital is limited, and cash flow is also something we have to be very mindful about. I think that's when a true education like the one at Ashoka, the one at Young India Fellowship came to become my strength, simply because we'd studied a bunch of so many things. There was mathematics, there was gender studies, and there was art. And now we use art to bring about social change. So we do something called the Crimson Wave, which is India's first traveling art exhibition that talks about menstruation, and also has a sub-series called Erythrean, which is basically art made with menstrual blood. And there's a lot of science that goes into how to preserve menstrual blood, and how to work with it, and what is the scientific component of what is the blood constitutes of, etc. So when we work in so many different areas, it is very, very handy and amazing to have a bunch of people who are there to support us. So I think just the network, the support that we get from the community across batches has been very, I mean, I'm at lack of words when I say that has been detrimental and instrumental to getting our organization to where we're at. Even now, we're a 6-people lean team, but I think we have at least 8 to 16 global collaborators, and all of that has been possible to a significant amount through the YIF community. So yeah, it's just like a hot pot and a melting ground of so many things. And I think that's what liberal arts prepares us for, to face any challenge that comes to us, be it from a business side, from a social side, from a community or a growth point of view as well. And not to forget the access that it gives us to mentors, be it professors, be it founders or senior community members, etc. I think that is one of the most fantastic things that the YIF has enabled for me and for the organization I work now.
Thank you so much, Sonal. That's really wonderful to know. Abhishek, we'd like to hear from your side. How has the Young India Fellowship helped you in your journey in social entrepreneurship?
Yes. The ELM was the biggest gift the Young India Fellowship gave me. So I took that ELM opportunity to explore ideas, do things, try it out, fail, so that in year one, like we failed thrice. So Saja was one of the 3 business ideas or social change ideas we were trying, and our ELM team ran. So I think that opportunity to do while you are also making yourself aware, skilled, and building on your competency and doing is that important thing. The second is the whole culture of liberal arts. I see liberal arts art as a risk taking. Like for a lot of people, when they choose a subject over a mainstream education, that is also a risk taking. I know my friends who studied at IIT and then chose to study gender studies. That was a curiosity. There was a curiosity to explore new, and for that curiosity, they took a risk. And that's the behavior we go through every time. We have to choose. We have to make a decision out of it, and we have to choose between all good. But what I want to explore. So that's the entire ethos around liberal arts, that it's broad, it gives the agency to the students to choose, and it helps you take risk. So that is the second thing helped me as the liberal arts culture. The third thing would be my peers. So I couldn't like make it like a financial document for my organization in like the first semester of YF. I couldn't like put a PPT together. So how my peers helped me to learn those skills during this was really phenomenal. And as Sonal pointed out, the network, the network, and just you can get network everywhere. But what is unique about YF network is the amount of belief they have in you. So if you go do them and say, oh, I'm going to do X, and they would say, why don't you do triple X or 10X rather than that? And that sort of like pushes you to think, oh, there's somebody who believes in you. And that matters most, apart from the skills and competency which we gain through the different subjects, which Sonal also talked about. And finally, the alumni community is where, like, I'm almost 9 years out of, or 10 years out of YIF, but still so close to the institution because of the lively alumni fraternity we have. We can reach out to each other. I hire like every year 1 or 2% for YIF. There are at least 2 ELMs from YIF which I float. So this constant give and take relationship the institution has built to engage with their alumni fraternity is like really commendable. My education has been primarily based in India. A lot of our friends go abroad, like Sonal did, and they build and there's over there people value alumni. But in India, I don't know whether Central echoes my philosophy, but my previous college's academic institution hardly engages with their alumni network effectively, and especially when you're a social entrepreneur, they see ये तो कभी donation देने वाला है नहीं, so just like give it in a pass. So these are the 4 things which actually stood for me and still standing out for me as a YF fraternity member.
Thank you, Abhishek. Senthil, let's hear your journey and how has YF been instrumental in that?
Thank you, Abhishek. I even resonate with your thing, like the alumni thing. Yeah, the alumni that we get out of YIF is really, Ashoka is really, really engaging and powerful, I must say. I resonate with you on that front. So the need for liberal education in this 21st century, I must say, is very, very high. For me, so I realize that in 21st century, like, people are very powerful if they are specialized generalists. Like in the earlier generations, like a couple of generations ago, people are more focused on becoming a specialist. If you're a generalist, you hardly get a job. But then if you're a specialist, you go higher up on your ladder. That's how things have been in the earlier generations. You see your father starting your career as a small level and then ending up as a higher level. In the same front, you become a specialist. That's how the generations were earlier. But in 21st century, you become more powerful if you are a specialized generalist, which means you're not a generalist, you don't learn everything, but you become specialized in a couple of things, which makes it more powerful, which makes yourself powerful. And that was a journey I had in the recent past for myself. So before YF, until 25 years of age, I was a specialist as computational fluid dynamics analyst. I was a fairly successful mechanical engineer working with DRDO and IGCA and so many research organizations in India and abroad. But then my exposure to liberal arts completely redefined me, completely changed me. I felt powerful before, but then I felt so strong and empowered after YIF. My life before and after YIF are different because I got exposed to various other things which complemented my other things. Like I had a technical background and my exposure to, and now I became a game designer. So this change is possible because of something called liberal arts. Your exposure to various arts, you tend to choose which one you like the most. You had that opportunity. Abhishek calls it a risk, like IIT gender studies. Liberal arts doesn't look like a risk for me. Like though many people said taking liberal arts might be a risk in the earlier stages, but then it paid off. It paid off really well. And I feel that I'm a specialized generalist and that's helping me a lot. So hence I feel that liberal arts creates a platform to make people a specialized generalist, which is very powerful in 21st century. And that's the short answer I would like to give. Thank you.
Thank you, Senthil. My next question will be directed towards Sonal. So, Sonal, your journey towards Boond has been very inspiring. Could you please take us a bit through your organization, how it functions, what is its business model, and how much of an impact have you been able to create so far?
So our model is that of a dynamic one. And the journey, I think, so for me, it wasn't that I went to YIF and then directly right after I started with a social enterprise. being mindful of financial stress at home, I first took up a corporate job with a pharmaceutical company. Never knew what I was doing in terms of life path, but I knew that what I was doing was interesting then, and it kept me going. So it invoked curiosity. I was learning new things every day. I was working with some of the best in the industry. And alongside, I was also doing the World Merit Fellowship and a bunch of other things. So essentially, it was a 9 to 6 job, and then I would come back, and I think let's say 9 to 5, and then 5 to 9, I was doing something else as well, right? So about 12 to 16 hours every day. And 2 years after doing a bunch of things, this one time when we were in the US, and somebody said this young change maker from India who is doing so many things, and I realized that everything that I do is actually not directly related to India, because I was working on energy efficiency and sustainable living mindfully, and a lot of that would just be on the West Coast. I mean, would be Northern America and Western Europe, because that's where access to energy is very high. And we started looking at data, we started looking at behavior patterns, etc. But then every time I would come back here and I would realize, and just live with friends, right? I would realize a city like Bombay, Bangalore, or Delhi is no different than New York. We also have the to-go culture, with food, with respect to everything that is microwavable, etc. We're also producing just that amount of waste. And then it struck me, if I have to create an impact, then I should probably be doing it closer to home ground. That's got me started about thinking, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I'm good at? And what is it that I have access to right now, which I can process to get where I want to? And I think three things that came together was that I wanted to work with menstruators in particular, because I have a long journey, long history of menstrual disorders. And I knew I wanted to build agency in women and non-binary people, basically anybody who was not a cis het man. And I wanted to work towards environmental impact, because climate change is something. I went vegan when I was in college, or undergrad college, in my teens, because all data that I was reading started having a huge impact right then and there. So basically, that's what prompted me to work in the space that I currently do. And while I was looking at how to start about, etc., I was in this really small country called Nicaragua, which I had to Google the first time I was told I was going to go there. And I was there for some Microsoft work, and somebody gave me a menstrual cup, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to use it because they spoke to me in Spanish. But I came back and I looked it up, and then I used it, and it changed my life. And the fact that such a thing existed and nobody back home was talking about it or using it was really, really bothersome. And that's when it struck that this is something which has to do with menstruation. This is something that builds agency, because it's an intra, it goes inside the body, which means we have to make a lot of choices for ourselves. And also it questions a lot of social constructs that we have around us. And it is great for the environment, because the same product can be used for over 10 years, which means eliminates a lot of waste, right? When I started looking, I found that there was somebody who had already started a similar organization. Their co-founder had left. I met them 6 months after that. And we decided to work together. And now fast forward, I think it's been 5 years. And here we are doing a range of projects. So Boond essentially works in the space of menstrual health along the verticals of advocacy, policy, social programming with monitoring and evaluation, different kinds of projects that we do, and reusable period products such as menstrual cups and cloth pads. And when it comes to impact, which I guess was the second part of your question, right? Right, Radhika?
Yes, Sonal.
Yeah. With respect to impact, I think when it comes to social programming, we're looking at knowledge, behavior, and attitude change. How do we perceive menstruation? What is our engagement socio-culturally? And also, what are the legal rights we have as a menstruator? A lot often than not, I think menstruation is just very nicely sidelined when we talk about sexual and reproductive health at large, or it can, I mean, I can't say or, but I think very tactically what can also be done is menstruation can be a starting space to have that larger conversation, at least with youth and young people, because it's a very taboo topic. Everybody wants to focus on menstrual health, but not focus, but like is comfortable talking about it, but maybe not so much about sexual and reproductive health. So it's a small gateway to get there. And I think that's what we also thought about and then started off. So initially it was just about the product, because product itself had multi-fold impact. And our model is such that we have a private limited company, and we also have a Section 8 company, which is a non-profit. So we started off with the product, slowly did social programming, and now we're running multiple campaigns like Periods and Patrakars, which urges people, journalists and people, experts in menstruation all across the world to talk about menstruation more inclusively and talk about and use verified data, because a lot of data in this field is smudged. To give you an example, the whole Nielsen report from 2016, which says 12% Indian women have access to sanitary napkins. That data is not spottable. Like, you can write to Nielsen and see, but you're not going to find that report at all. And then we have at least 200 newspapers over the span of 4 years who have spoken about it. But how do we then verify it? And data is super important because that is what helps you bridge the gaps, right? So first we started off with individual impact, and then slowly we expanded to systemic impact as to how do we find systemic problems. That's where all these campaigns came in. One of the campaigns that we're running today, I mean right now as we speak, is called Stop Period Penalty, where we document different kinds of menstrual practices which could be discriminatory, exclusionary, etc. There's a repository of about 1,000 such experiences from across the country. Now it is going to help us build a legal toolkit on rights of a menstruator, where a menstruator can say, hey, in the labor space, like in informal workspaces and factories, etc. Exploitation is to the extent that there are employers who say that women and menstruators have to remove their uteruses before coming into that workplace, or the fact that they're forcefully given a pill to reduce menstrual pain without any volition, without exercising any agency, saying that it affects the productivity. These are some of the forms. And then there is the sublimala issue. There are multiple things, like a lot of menstruators are not allowed to go into the kitchen when on their period. So how can we address all of this constitutionally? Because menstruation-based discrimination is essentially a gender-based discrimination, right? But this will mean challenging a lot of socio-cultural practices and religious practices that we have in the country. And that is important. So that is one of the things we focus on. And another area of impact for us has also been on menstrual disorders, because there's very little conversation around that space. And menstrual disorders, it's not just medically, but also how do we experience them socially. I recently did a TEDx which spoke about how every menstrual disorder, there's also social stigma that comes to it, be it PCOS, because there are androgenic features. Then are menstruators comfortable with their bodies? Those menstruators who are women, they feel very compromised in the body because of toxic body image issues that are very prevalent in our society. So we try and challenge and address those as well. And as we call ourselves a social enterprise, one of the things that we actively try to do is that every quarter when we come up with a financial report, we also have a system of impact reporting, where every time we take a decision, we think, is it going to have financial repercussions? Is it also going to have impact repercussions? How do we find out, like, what is the sweet spot in between, right? Like, this project can bring us X amount of revenue, but is it also X amount of impact? But if it is a lot of impact and less money, then how are we going to find that, strike that spot which works for both these reports and from both these angles and for both these metrics? I think is a jugalbandi that we've been figuring out and working with in the last 5 years. There are multiple forms of impact. We started off with cups, and now we have cloth pads. Product line is expanding, and then we have services which are expanding, campaigns that we are able to run. There are international grants coming in. Smaller projects that we could do before was one of these things is called Together Cup, which is sharing privilege, where a person from an economically strong background contributes to someone who is economically lesser privileged. A whole bunch of such programs we've been able to do. And I think we've also been able to integrate our personal interests also, like could be filmmaking, because I went to a film school, or I'm very interested in art. So the Crimson Wave thing that we came up with. A small social enterprise also allows for a lot of new experiences and experimentation that can happen. And as Abhishek correctly pointed out, I think it takes a lot of risk, and it also takes responsibility, or rather the fun element of dreaming big. So
thank you so much, Sonal.
Radhika, I wanted to say, I know I spoke a little more than required, but that's also because I have a hard stop at 4:30. But if there are questions, I know I will not be able to take them here, but you can always forward them in my email, and I'll get back.
Sure, sure. We'll share
Yeah.
your email ID with the participants. Thank you so much, Sonal.
Thank you.
It's really nice to know how from a really small organization, Bond has progressed and created such a tangible impact. So thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you for listening. And Abhishek and Sandal, I will catch a recording of this. Thank you for everyone who joined. I hope you apply to the YIF and you'll be in for a roller coaster if you do make the shortlist. Thank you. I'll see you all another time on another platform. Bye.
Senthil, let's move on to you. When we talk about Muddy games and the idea of creating serious games, how has your journey been with Muddy games, the kind of business model that you're using for your organization, and the kind of impact that you've created so far?
Sure. So first of all, when Muddy started, as I said, Muddy, I wanted to take the concept that I learned in Ashoka University to the masses. That was my idea. So I started doing workshops, and there were no takers for the workshop predominantly in the first. My first program was Fundamentals of Law. That was the first program that we did as part of Muddy, but there were no takers for the program, and we were worried. Why weren't people attending the workshop? We did rigorous marketing and all these things. We bought the best lawyers from the High Court to run the program, but people were hesitant to join the program. But then I know that learning these concepts are really powerful for younger generation, so I had to take it somehow. That's when I met Nikhil. Nikhil is also an Young India fellow. So we both were representing two different organizations as part of Center for Entrepreneurship in Ashoka. So we both were entrepreneurs in residence, and Nikhil had an idea of creating games for social problems and so on and so forth. So I collaborated with Nikhil to create the first board game on law, fundamentals of law. Then people turned up for the workshop. So people are so much interested in learning. That's when I realized that people are interested in learning all these things, but the pedagogy was not so interesting. People are bored of lectures. People are bored of trainings. People wanted a different way of learning all these things. So board games, learning via board games made it very, very easier for me. So then we started researching multiple board games. We imported 1,000 odd board games from across the world, and we started designing multiple board games. So that's how Muddy became a board game based, serious board game based company. But then board game had its challenges to scale because if a card is torn, if a card is lost, the game becomes unplayable. It becomes very difficult to host one more time. So we eventually, after a lot of hesitation, a lot of thinking, we decided to move digital. We don't want to go as a video game, a game which you play alone, but we decided to bring the entire concept of board game, wherein people co-learn from each other. People of any age can sit together and play a game, play a board game and learn. Can you recreate the same experience in a digital platform? That's how Muddy was born, just before COVID. We didn't change to digital after COVID. We changed even before COVID. We decided to move digital. A serious game, multiplayer, real-time serious game, which helps you learn different mental models that further enhances your uniquely human skills. So that's what we do at Muddy Games. We are a private limited company. Presently, we are working under a SaaS model, wherein we subscribe our games to the corporates for them to use it regularly and train their employees and enhance their employee engagement, and also build their empowering of employees. So that's what we do. And we're slowly moving to the school front. So we're targeting age groups 8 to 14. We'll have exposure to our serious games very soon. Yeah, that's the journey we're having. So the impact, you say, there are so much to focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but very limited focus on these skills. Mental models are really powerful, but mental models are really are very less talked about. Nobody knows, nobody talks much about mental models these days. It's picking up, but people are unaware. But mental models are very powerful tools that you can use. So can you teach these mental models and empower people? That's what we do. We're trying to empower people on their uniquely human skills which are exclusively meant for humans, which an AI can never replace. So can you build on those skills? And that's what we do with our serious games. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Senthil. When we talk about social entrepreneurship, then a lot of times we only think that it is related to non-governmental organizations. But here, through this panel, we find out that there are so many business models when we talk of being a social entrepreneur, whether it's running a social enterprise or a non-governmental organization or even a hybrid model. So, Abhishek, when it comes to your organization, Sanja, what kind of a business model does your organization follow? And we know that it has created a lot of, your organization has created a lot of impact in terms of reaching out to around 1,500 schools and 3 states. So what is the kind of impact that you have created through reaching out to these communities?
So when we look at models, there are various versions of models. When sometimes when people say model, it is about the financial model your organization operates on, or the operating model that your organization operates on. But I think in the last 8, 9 years, the most dynamic thing for us has been the model. And especially the pandemic is a place where it changed drastically. So every 2 years, 3 years, we have experimented with different model, and I'm sure like people go through this journey. But what is the core? The core remains. You can call it a mission, you can call it a purpose, you can call it your values. That remains. For us, it was that the parents are empowered so that they can create learning environment at home. They can partner with school teachers and make a classroom experience more contextualized. They can be part of the school management committee and make the school governance more transparent and effective. And fourth, they can also negotiate with the state where the parental voice is heard. This is like the broad framework of our work, we call it theory of change or something. And it keeps, and the model remains. So we are completely on grants, but we also have we of a revenue model, but that's 20% of it. So it depends on how the market is. But what I want to drive is that even before we go into thinking what kind of financial model and financial viability is of that organization, what is most important is the problem you want to solve. And that you have to be committed to. And to solve that problem, might need different approaches as well as financial model. The third thing which when we talk about impact, so of course, social organizations need to create an impact, but when you grow, there will be different projects into it, and different projects have different impact indicators. For example, if you take the example of Ashoka University, through YF, we are creating a certain kind of impact, and through UG program and different programs, we have a different impact. What is core to a social entrepreneurship is it changes the status quo. That is the real crux. That's the aim purpose. That how through Booth we can change the status quo of a menstruating woman in India. How can we change the status quo of learning in India, which needs to be fun, more gamified? And for us, the status quo was how can we see parents as partners in the education transformation in India? And that's what we are striving for. And when it comes to impact indicators, it could be how, and you have to prove it through an impact. यहाँ parents आते हैं तो learning में improvement होता है, और child well-being में there's an improvement, or safety, and we have matrix around it for different projects based on the government expectation and the person's funding us. But what is the larger framework in the ecosystem you are trying to address to? And that's probably one of the things which I would like to push the impact boundary to the framework change, to the ecosystem change. And that's doesn't happen like after 5 years or 10 years. It starts on the day one that I want to change the status quo of a Dalit girl in every school. I want to change that. And you are Radhika from Ashoka Changemaker, and you know the idea of framework change and how they are building it on empathy. So when we started, the biggest pushback for us was कि India में parents कर नहीं सकते. Over here, the parents are daily wagers. They don't have formal education. How would they contribute in school management? How can they contribute in policy advocacy? but we proved it. Like every year we set ourselves goal. The pehla saal ka sawal tha, parents wouldn't come. So our first outcome indicators would be the parents would come. Parental participation wouldn't lead to education increase. So the second hypothesis, so whatever the biases is there becomes your impact. Like whatever this is not going to work, then you create an impact and you know it is going to work and this is how it's going to show it. So of course, and we have done third-party assessment where we have seen, and with Google, Bolo, and Satwa, like when a parent is involved, there is 3x times more chances of learning increment in that sense. When a parent is involved in school governance and systemic change, 40% of the long pending grievances resolve. So that's how that's couple of the impact. And when you prove that impact, more state government invites you that you come, and that's a small bit. But I want to drive the conversation towards what is the big framework we change. So when we started, the pushback was parents nahi kar sakte. We have 6-7 organizations right now in India working on parental participation. There was none when we started. So that's how you build an ecosystem of that for that mission. So probably this is my slightly value addition to this conversation over here.
Thank you for pointing out a really important fact when we are working in the social impact space, that it's not good to work in silos, but it's through collaborations and partnerships that we can create a larger change. Senthil, my next question will be for you. How has your experience being an entrepreneur in residence at the Center for Entrepreneurship at Ashoka? Could you share a little bit more about that with our participants and audience?
Yeah, my pleasure. So after YIF, I took 1 year off. I went to another startup to learn the nuances of a startup, to learn how a startup actually works. Can I start something on my own? So that 1 year of my experience in the startup actually gave me the confidence. Okay, let's start. And I just went ahead and applied for CFE, and I got selected, and I went there, and that's when the learning actually started. So there were very good faculties they brought, and who taught me the fundamentals of starting up. Though in the theoretical format, it really helped me to start with business model canvases, lean business model canvases, to understand your process better. So that's when my product became better. My idea, my problem definition got shaped better in the CFE. Though I had the passion to make change in the education system, the actual problem that I'm trying to address got redefined in the CFE. And the fellows that I met over there, like, as I said, Nikhil was not from my batchmate. He was from another batch. He became my first collaborator. We designed the game together. So those things happened, and the confidence that each and everybody pushes. There are a lot of people who applied for CFE. There were a lot of cohorts in the cohort, a lot of startups in the cohort. But some down the line, they take another career, but they still keep pushing you. They keep asking you what's happening at your ends, and how are things progressing. That peer support is always there as part of CFE. Yeah, that's how that was helpful for me to start my startup journey. That was my first incubation center in Ashoka University. Then I moved to Chennai. Now I'm in my native place, but yeah, that was the first incubation.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's a very interesting program that probably someone in our audience or participants might be interested to go for. Abhishek, when we talk about Saja, then Saja is a regular ELM client at the Young India Fellowship. So how do you feel when someone comes to you and tells you that probably they have an idea in their mind to start something of their own, and they don't know how to go about it? So whether it's a Young India Fellow or some other individual, how would you guide them in a direction and help them in their own journey to start something of their own?
So my first advice has always been started now. And that is what I get. Like, I want to do this, I have this idea, and I would say, like, why don't we start it now? And I would always like, there are certain administrative challenges we see And I'm also open. This is a public announcement that people, if they're facing certain hurdles, they could reach out to me. But doing it now is very important. And if you look at Saja, it started as an ELM project and it became an organization after 1.5 years finally. So during that period, we were incubated under Pratham Education Foundation, Delhi. And that is, it's not important that if you want to do like good in that sense to start an organization, the first step is to get registration. But the first step is to start what you think is going to be right for this world and start it now. So this, I think that's the only advice I have. I don't have any other advice than that.
I think that's very useful for someone who wants to start something and go ahead. Thank you for sharing. Um, we can now move on to the question and answers round. We have a few questions from our audience. Our first question would be, what are the challenges that you faced in your journey of being a social entrepreneur and starting up your own ventures and your own initiatives? Because this journey is not something which is away from challenges. Challenges will always be there in your journey. So what were the challenges that you overcame or you came across, Senthil? How has the journey been for you in terms of challenges?
So there are challenges like any startup. There are always challenges, but then your passion overcomes all those challenges. Is what I feel like. I don't consider those as real hurdles. I'm ready for that. I took the startup knowing that there will be some challenges. There'll be 4 years without any financial income every month, an active income every month. Also, that's one of the biggest financial challenges. Is one of the biggest challenges. But we know it in advance. Even before we started this organization, we know we're going to face the challenge. But my passion actually pushes me to do that. I think it's same with all the entrepreneurs out there. They're ready to face the challenge. Yeah, I don't. For me, I don't see it as a big problem or a big challenge. It's okay. It's part of the journey of an entrepreneur, and I'm okay with it. Things are shaping up. Things are really shaping up well, and just overcoming it. I'd like to hear from Abhishek what he says.
Yeah. So first thing would be, I think I wouldn't distinguish it for social entrepreneurs only. Challenge is what is part of our professional journey. And whenever you want to do something big and bold, you have to face challenges. The biggest gift of social entrepreneurship journey is that builds your resilience like anything, that you fail every day at least 10 times and you wait for that one moment you feel, oh, aaj kuch acha hua hai zindagi mein. So, and you know, in my first school where I was working, so when I started working, started at the grassroots level itself because, and at the same time setting up the organization. One of like a group of teachers accused me of molesting a child, and that was like traumatic for me, like my first organization. If that happens, because the teachers were facing threatened, yeah, the parents empowered ho jayenge, they have to make the school committees and make it more transparent. That day I went home like running, like dripping all my ears, ye to main nahi kar sakta. But when I overcome that process, every day the joy was overcoming that process. And when we look at today's world, it's more about entrepreneurial mindset. Wherever you go, then entrepreneurship. And I see it in Saja's leadership team. So the leadership team who's leading. So I was maybe like an entrepreneur in first 3 years. But the organization is being driven by different kind of people who have that entrepreneurial ability in like taking risk, thinking something which is beyond their capacity. And when you imagine something which is beyond your capacity, you're destined to fail. You are planning how you are going to fail 100 times. And when we say that at the age of 23, 24, you are going to work with 1,000 principals and state governments who are like 55 IS, you're designing your failure in that sense because it's not easy. No one has taught you. So I think resilience is the way to go for just be in their moment, be there. if you be there and don't like run away or something like that, you start figuring out how you will deal with the problem, because there's no template like step 1, step 3, like the problem solving tree. You can do that, but at a leadership level, you face every day very complex gray problems rather than black and white problems. So a lot of problem solving tools can help you identify which is black and which is white, but not the gray area in that sense. Having said this, like to be in that moment is important, where the challenge is being closer to it. That doesn't mean burning out yourself and that on the sake of being resilient, you destroy yourself and you become pathetic, a person whom you don't like to be. And it's often said like well-being is equals to well-doing. If we are not taking care of ourselves, we are not doing good over here. It would be difficult to do that. So it's also important to let it go sometimes. And that's what I have started learning right away. And it's not like initial middle for how can I give up? But giving up is like a strategy as well sometimes. And I don't follow cricket, but my friends keep on talking about how people just stay on the pitch for 15 balls. They might not even score 1 run, and after 15 balls they start scoring more, or like they give up the team and somebody else comes in and fill in and hits a century, which happened in the recent cricket match. So being committed and closer to the problem and being self-aware, knowing where you want to push, where you want to stay, and where you want to let it go, that somebody else can take it. This is the self-actualization process. One goes through it. There's no template to it. Just like some reflection every day helps you that what I did well, what could I have done better. Having a community that pushes you to think beyond, that helps. So this is how I deal with challenges. Like sometimes I face it, sometimes I just be there, and sometimes I let it go and somebody who's better come and fill in that space. So maybe if it's helpful for people over here, or it's too platonic.
So that's where the experience comes in. Yeah. 10 years of entrepreneurial experience speaks for it.
Yeah.
Abhishek, you rightly pointed out about letting go and going ahead through resilience. When we are talking about working for these ventures and constantly working for an organization, for a cause, often we experience emotional burnout. And when we talk about this, then what is one thing that constantly motivates you to work for it no matter what and not give up on the organization or the cause that you're working for?
So first thing is de-pedestalizing yourself. And when you are a social entrepreneur, and especially when you are a social entrepreneur to 25, 26, you are pedestalized a lot by like awards like Forbes. It gives you certain kind of identity and few drinks and good food in a 5-star hotel and nothing beyond after that. So even if you are being pedestalized, you know you are here for something else. And if the world is not telling you, you need people who will tell you, or you need to tell yourself that I am just like any other person in this world. This helps me a lot. The second thing is practicing gratefulness and gratitude. It's like, I know it's not easy, but whatever like we do, we are just culmination of it. We could build Saja because there was support from Pratham and there was support from my friends. I just became the focal point of drawing that energy and converting it to Saja. So it's again connected to the previous point. Do not give yourself that much importance. You are just drawing it, connecting the dots, and taking it further. I've built a lot on the legacy of Pratham's learning, other organizations working in education space, and they have done it for 30 years. So what is happening in Sacha is just not my baby. It's like people who have been doing it for years and years through research and through being on ground. So it's everyone's in that sense. After gratitude comes trust and faith. Like as we trust ourselves, we also need to trust our people. Just Just that, like, I have a certain way of doing things, and that person might have a different way of doing things. But if the intentions are right, if the commitment is right, just trust their method. Like people trusted my method. When we started, our method was not proved like how this is going to work, but somebody came and invested that trust. So similarly, as an entrepreneur, when you have a team who is so energetic, so forefront, and since they're different people, they would have different ways of doing it. And and that's there your trust is practice. I trust that person like somebody trusted you. So these are the three things which I practice to keep myself sane.
Thank you for sharing those insights, Abhishek. Senthil, how has it been for you regarding keeping yourself motivating and keeping yourself going despite the challenges that come on your way?
Yeah, for me, gratitude is very powerful. As Abhishek was saying, maintaining some sort of a gratitude journal, a 5-minute journal in the morning, pushes you for the day. But then to push you longer for a month or so, like you just need to attend a lot of workshops and webinars around and guest sessions around. In YIF, we had this guest speakers, right? Like wherein they, whenever you're down, they come and do something, like, they motivate you to do further. So similarly, even for entrepreneurs, like we have a lot of gatherings here, a lot of workshops where they share their story, right? So once you go there, be part of that community, right? They will push you further. So it's a community that pushes you and they motivate you. You just attend one such webinar, it will give you the energy for the next 1 month.
Seems like there is an internet issue at Senthil's side. Abhishek, we'll direct our next question to you until Senthil's internet connection is resolved. What made you apply for the Young India Fellowship, and what was one course that you really liked during the course of the fellowship?
Mm-hmm. So, what made me apply was, of course, I wanted to build something, and I wasn't sure. I had some ideas how to go next. They're not like I don't like these entrepreneurship programs which were being offered at that point of time. I wasn't sure whether, if I want to continue to go with the job. I came across YF and I said, as I said, like I looked at there is an ELM segment to it. Plus, there are so many courses which I would like to learn, and especially the courses I got attracted towards were maths, business studies, economics. Because when you build an organization, we start from a lot of from the grassroots side, the demand side, but we also need to look at the supply side. Who's going to invest in that? How the money is going to come in that sense. So my sense was like I wanted to be explored different subjects to even equip myself to be an entrepreneur. And what was my favorite subject? I think the subject which I still use the most in my daily life is, yeah, Senthil, I'll just complete a line and then I'll pass it on to you. Okay. So is the foundations of leadership, which by Jack. And that's when, and it's just not me who uses it. I think it's so replicable that I have done those sessions on similar line with with tribal communities in Maharashtra or Jharkhand or in a low income neighborhood, people who might have not been to school. The replicability and the usefulness of those tools and this thinking process and mental models as Senthil spoke about is, I think, all the subjects were favorite, but I think I would go with Foundations of Leadership because of its usability. Still, I'm using it on a daily basis. Yeah, we can go back to Santhil. I was using a filler.
Okay, I don't know where, sorry, it's a no moon day here. Like whenever there is a no moon day, they cut the power. for the entire day. So I was using my mobile data and it ran out of it. I'm using my wife's data and I'm connecting. Sorry for the disturbance here. I don't know where I was lost. I was thinking about gratitude journal. And
Yes, Senthil, you were mentioning about what keeps you going, and along with that, you can also share why you applied for the Young India Fellowship and what was one of the courses that you really liked here at YIF.
Okay. So I'll just finish what I was saying. Like maintaining a gratitude journal pushes you for the day, but if you'd like to push yourself for a month or further, so what I would do is I attend workshops. I attend entrepreneurial workshop where they share their stories, where they share their journeys. So listening to their journeys and stories, being part of that community actually pushes me further. Just one workshop will motivate me for another 30 days, just like our YIF guest speaker sessions did at YIF. It does the same here. I'm just doing, that's what I do. I do the workshops. And why did I join YIF? As I said, I wanted to be a professor, and learning the technical stuff was there everywhere. I could learn the technical stuff everywhere, but then can I be a holistic professor? Can I be a professor who understands finance better, who understands engineering professor who understands finance better, who understands economics, who understand law? Those are the reasons why I took YIF. And I deferred my PhD admissions into IITs and other abroads because I can do PhDs at any point of age, but then YIF has an age limit. You can't do it after 28 years of age. So I thought, let me do 1 year of YIF, try to make myself holistic, and then start. So it was law courses, it was finance courses that actually motivated me to apply for YIF. The law, because I have no idea on that, finance, no idea. So those two courses actually interested me. But then once I entered YIF, I had a big surprise. Like there are so many courses. Picking up one course as favorite is very, very difficult. But then I would pick group dynamics as my favorite. I've never cried so much. But then some 12 days, 20 odd days of crying. Group dynamics is my favorite course over there. But economics, I loved economics also by Shiv Kumar. So many courses to choose, but group dynamics to be the best among the lot.
Thank you for sharing, Senthil. We feel like it was a really wholesome discussion talking about social entrepreneurship and how the Young India Fellowship and liberal arts played a role in your own journeys, especially in putting you through the phase of being a social entrepreneur. So thank you so much to Abhishek, Senthil, and even thank you so much, Abhishek, Senthil, and Sonal for sharing your journeys with us today. And thank you so much to all the attendees for taking out your time and hearing us out. Thank you, everyone. We hope you got some useful insights from our discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.